Well, we're now joined by the president of the Métis National Council, Cassidy Caron. Ms. Caron, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Listen, I want to begin with the meeting that you did have last week with federal officials, because afterwards you were expressing some frustration. I'm wondering what that is about. Are you concerned that your meetings are becoming more perhaps symbolic as opposed to substantive?
So that was the concern going into the meeting. I think after the meeting, there was a renewed sense of commitment to the actual process, the permanent bilateral mechanism, but there still is some frustration in needing to continue to make progress and the investments that are behind the policy areas that we are jointly committed to. And without future investments into these areas, we show up at these tables time and time again, recommitting to the same priority areas, talking about the needs of Métis citizens and the Métis Nation as a whole, and not being able to make progress until those investments are made.
Now, there was an investment in education from what I saw. What else is missing for you, though, out of these discussions?
So the investment into education was very small. It is the first of its kind ever, really, into primary and secondary education for the Métis Nation, which is a really good step in the right direction. It's capacity dollars so that we can continue down the path of creating policy around primary and secondary education for the Métis Nation. But for us, you know, one of the big frustrations is the lack of progress that has been made on a Métis subaccord. We have been talking about making progress on self-determined Métis priorities to achieve equitable health care for the Métis Nation for 7 years now. Time and time again, we will sign memorandums of understanding talking about how we will negotiate a subaccord, but budget after budget, there's no allocations made specifically for the Métis Nation to move forward on that priority, and our MOUs expire. So we're faced with that challenge again, with an MOU expiring at the end of this fiscal. So that puts a timeline on the negotiations of a health subaccord to be able to provide supports to our Métis governments so that they can create the actual change that's needed in the lives of Métis citizens.
Okay, so memorandum of understanding expires by the end of this fiscal, but there is a federal budget before that.
Exactly.
Do you have any hope that any of your concerns will be addressed in the next federal budget?
So we really hope so. The timing of this permanent bilateral mechanism meeting is quite good to have the recommitment of all of these federal ministers about the priority areas, so economic development, health, education, emergency management. We have received recommitment from these ministers that they want to make progress on these areas. It's important for the Métis Nation. It's important for Canada. So bringing that weight to meetings with the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, to ensure that the asks that we have for Budget 2024 are taken seriously so that we can continue to move forward down this pathway to ultimately reconciliation.
Well, as these discussions go on with the government, there's also, as you know, at this point, the Bill C-53 making its way through Parliament. And according to that bill, it will ratify self-government agreements with between Ottawa and the Métis Nation of Ontario, the Métis Nation in Saskatchewan, the Métis Nation of Alberta. But it is being opposed by the Métis Federation in Manitoba as well as Ontario First Nations, primarily because of the inclusion of the Ontario Métis. I'm wondering how that kind of debate is affecting the discussions you yourself with your organizations having with the federal government.
So Bill C-53 is at this point separate from the negotiations that we have on Budget 2024. This afternoon, or this morning actually, Bill C-53 did make it through the INAN process, and it has been referred back for third reading back to the House. So we're hopeful for that. That takes place, and then also the budget. You know, we weren't exactly sure the timing of Bill C-53 on this entire process, and we'll continue to see that through, but we also continue to advocate for the supports needed for Métis citizens in all of our Métis governments.
But it does point to a bit of division and conflict within the Métis Nation, and I'm wondering if that does, in your point of view, affect what you're hearing from Ottawa as it tries to sort out which level of government, which government it's going to be dealing with moving forward?
I don't think it has anything to do actually with the budget negotiations that we've got in place right now. Ultimately, the Métis National Council advocates for 4 Métis governments, which is a majority of registered Métis citizens across the homeland. And in order to create positive changes in the lives of Métis citizens who are also Canadians, that falls on our shoulders at the Métis National Council, and we'll continue to do that advocacy.
Do you find it difficult, though, as you deal with this? Because, going through some of the comments being posted on social media, there are obviously people within the nation who are very hurt, feel very strongly about the debate that's happening right now.
Definitely. There's been a lot of debate around Bill C-53. I think a lot of the challenge actually comes from the lack of conversation and the lack of willingness for all of the sides to come together and actually have a conversation about what Bill C-53 is. Ultimately, what Bill C-53 is a piece of legislation that will allow for the implementation of self-government, which is the internal affairs of each of our Métis governments. It talks about being able to have elections, being able to draw down jurisdiction for children and families. It doesn't talk about anything that is largely controversial, like lands and resources. The bill doesn't talk about those things, and I think, if individuals were to take a look at the legislation itself, they would see that, and it would cause less concern.
Cassidy Caron, I always appreciate the time. Thank you for this.
Thank you so much.